And boom.
Hello, welcome back to NextDev FM, a show for developers by developers. My name is Dan Guzman. I'm joined by my friend and co-host,
Ryan Vogel.
and we have another exciting guest today, a legendary open source contributor, a builder who is widely recognized as the guy who fixes the web. Introducing.
Sup?
So,
Yeah.
Tan himself, yeah.
Tanner Linsley. That's me.
yeah, this is the guy. So, Tanner, really excited to have you. You have so many projects that we can discuss, but we're going to start from the very beginning, run through your entire journey in open source. And yeah, why don't you start by giving us a 2-minute origin story? What got you into coding? Where did you start, etc.?
Well, let's see. I think we all remember getting the internet for the first time at our houses. That was pretty significant. I think most of us remember, I don't know, it depends on how old you are, but I remember getting Napster. That was a pretty significant moment. Like I remember being a pirate when I was like, from like ages 8 to 12 or 14 or something like that. And then I think it was in high school. Like I got into a bunch of stuff. I was into music. I got into DAW software and music production. I took some web development classes in high school that were like CSS just came out and it was like a big deal, and like JavaScript was still super janky and really young. But it was fun. It was like HTML classes really.
Right. Was that like your first ever, I mean, it's often debated, like if it's a programming language, but was that your first like technical programming project, like making that website?
Yeah, I took that class and then like a visual studio. What wasn't Visual Studio? What was it? It's like the Visual Basic.
QBasic?
No, it was like from Microsoft.
Oh,
I don't even remember what
that
it's called, but it's like had a UI in front of it a little bit, but then there was a ton of like weird programming. Like I took both of those classes at the same time. And I loved it. It was great, but I never thought like, oh, I'm going to be a programmer.
Right.
Because I always wanted to go into music and film. I actually studied film and music in college mostly. But all during high school, in my later years, I had an internship that every other day I would just go and build Joomla sites, basically. So Joomla was awesome.
Yeah.
I did Joomla sites for a long time. And then when I went to college and was studying film and audio, and I ran out of money going to school for film and audio, and I was like, how the heck am I going to make more money?
Right.
I was working at Simply Mac, which is a third-party Apple retailer store. I was like the Genius Bar guy, just fixing.
Don't they like
Mac
specialize
stuff.
in like the hard drives now, like the Mac specific hard drives? I think that's
I don't know. Maybe I just worked at the Genius Bar, their version of it. It's just fixing people's problems all the time. But I had a couple people come in and were like, "Hey, do you know how to build websites?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember doing that. Like, yeah, I know how to build websites." And they were like, "Cool, I need a website." I was like, "Okay, I can get it for you." And they're like, "And I need it like now." So I started slinging these websites, working at this third-party Apple retailer, and yeah, I started making good money. Like this was back in 2012, 2011, 2012. And I was like doing like $1,000 for a website. I could get them done in like a day or two,
Nice. Just without AI. Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, just like copy paste and, a bunch of macros and things. And yeah, and I wasn't using Joomla either because WordPress was the new hot thing, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask, I was like, are you using like a WordPress backend for those? Because that's pretty impressive.
I did very quickly because I was like, man, I can't do all this by hand. So I started using WordPress and then I discovered themes. And that's actually, so I knew a little bit of PHP already, but then I was like, oh man, this is actually useful now. So I started building like custom PHP stuff in WordPress, and I actually ran into my first open source experience when I was trying to build a store with WordPress, and I found WooCommerce. And WooCommerce was it was open source. They had like paid stuff, right? But it was mostly open source. And I was like, what do you mean it's open source? Is this free? And it's like, well, WordPress is open source, but there were like all these plugins and things. So I started going deeper into the open source world there. And that's how I paid for most of my college, was just building these websites. I eventually got hired into a company doing just that.
Right.
And yeah, so that was kind of like I learned HTML in high school and a little bit of JavaScript when it was like you're still writing it in the HTML, you know?
Oh, right. Like the script tags and all that jazz.
Right. But my first real like programming experience was PHP, getting into PHP and MySQL and doing some crazy things there. And then obviously you can't have WordPress without jQuery. So I was like getting really into jQuery stuff. And yeah, that's kind of where it all started. So in school, what happened is I was studying for film and audio. And then I just went into audio, and I was taking a class and it was like a required class for web development and software. And I just
in your audio focus.
Yeah. So it's like to get into the audio program, you had to like take 2 classes that weren't affiliated with your major.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Well, not quite generals, but like, hey, we just
it's like an expanse type thing.
Yeah, right? We just want to be well-rounded, right? And I was like, oh, look, there's a web development class. I can just breeze through that. So I took it and I like finished all of my work in like 2 weeks.
Nice.
And the head of the department of that class was the head of like the whole, I don't know, audio engineering / software department. And he was like, you are not doing audio engineering anymore. He's like, you're going to be poor and you're going to end up hating music. He's like, so we're going to make you a software engineer, and then you can make a bunch of money doing software and you can still do music and have fun. And I was like, I mean, it took some convincing. Yeah. I was like, okay, that's fine. He changed my major right there.
No choice.
I quickly got very frustrated with school and tech though. Cause I was like, okay, if I'm going to do websites and stuff, let's get into some IT, like some classes around programming principles and all this stuff. I got really frustrated because everything was really old.
So that's actually so funny you bring that, because I'm in college right now, and obviously I'm involved with this side of the web where everything's iterating at like 1 trillion miles an hour. And all of the classes, like I took a web dev class last year, and not a single thing about like a modern framework or sort of like any of your stuff or like anything like that was mentioned. And it was all like jQuery, HTML, inline CSS, not even like Tailwind. And I mentioned some of the stuff to the professor, because I was like, wait, can we use like external CSS libraries for like Tailwind? And obviously I had to do like cdn.tailwind.com because there's no Webpack to compile everything. And he was like, what's Tailwind? I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah, like, you don't know about any of this? And I ran him through a couple demos and stuff like that of like React Router and some other like and
I'm sure they're like all that really other stuff. Fascinated by it, and they're like, oh man,
yeah, they were. He was like, I want to teach this, but they can't because the curriculum is locked. Yeah, and my buddy is taking it spring semester right now, and he's saying it's still the same thing. And he said like the professor like said, here, I'm going to show you some of this other cool stuff, but you can't use it for the projects and stuff like that because the curriculum locks it down. I'm like, I just feel like that isn't helpful to sort of further education. And it's like easier to just learn it outside of school, which is what I've done. And that's how I've kind of done everything. Yeah. And I feel like I've been able to be unleashed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I started building a project with Angular in one of my classes. Like Angular 1X had just come out. It was really cool. I wanted to be an app developer. So I started learning. I was like, I got into Ionic. And I was like, whoa, I could build apps with Ionic, because I was not going to learn Objective-C. Like, there's no way.
Nope.
So I started doing Ionic, and then that was Angular. And then I brought that into my school stuff. And my teachers was like, whoa, what are you doing? You can't use this. This is weird. And I was like,
I don't understand this, so you can't use it. Yeah.
one of the head of my department, he's actually an awesome guy. His name is Thor Anderson. He was open to it. He was like, okay, like I'll let you use it, but you've got to promise me you're going to learn the fundamental stuff too. I was like, yeah, sure. But eventually he's like, dude, I don't have any more info for you on this Angular stuff. So you've got to go outside. I was like, all right. And he's like, go to this meetup. It's going to be at this, company in like Salt Lake City or whatever. And I'm going to be there. There's going to be tons of other people there because it's all new and nobody knows what they're doing. And I was like, okay, cool. So I went there, and my first time there, this guy gets up to speak, and he starts talking about this library that he made with Angular called Genie. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. Like this guy made an open source library. It's called like Genie, right? And it was Kent C. Dodds.
Nice.
It was his very first talk that he gave at this meetup, at this Angular meetup. And I happened to be, that was the first time I went.
That's so funny. It's like the world's we had him on a couple episodes ago, and he was talking about that. And it's so funny. It's like the multiverse like converging over here. It's like everybody's intertwined and connected.
Yeah, like there were a lot of people kind of groundswell in Utah around like JavaScript stuff. Because there was a lot of people from like Oracle around. Instructure was there, which I think is where Michael and Ryan met each other and kind of did their thing with React Router. Lots of fun stuff happening there. But
so that conference like ignited like the next century of the web, essentially, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, that was just a meetup. And there were like
the meetup.
There were like 3 meetups that were happening. Like they were really small, like 30 people. But yeah, like that's where I remember things really taking off. Actually, that's where I met my co-founders for when we started Nozzle together. So Nozzle was the last company that I did for like a decade, from 2013 to 2023.
That's pretty cool.
That's where I met them. I saw Kent speak multiple times. I did my first talks pretty soon after that, like building some of my own little libraries in Angular. So yeah, that's kind of where open source started taking off. I was like, oh man, the open source ecosystem is insane. Like I got to be a part of this.
Right.
So, yeah, it was fascinating. After that, I think it was history. Like school was just like a back burner thing after that.
That's what it feels like. Yeah. Cause it's like, once you've been unleashed, like, okay, I will say the first 2 years of school, because I'm a senior now, basically. And the first 2 years of school, I was like, whoa, this is so cool. I love school. But then after I've gotten out into like the real world, gone to conferences, gone to meetups and everything, I'm like, whoa, there's so much more that I could be doing and networking and learning. And none of this is being done in school. And it's the same thing. School has kind of become like this back burner where it's like, okay, I got to do my classes, but on the weekends, I'm going to go to a meetup or a conference rather than go hang out with like the study group or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be really frustrating, but I think it's worth it to get through it. Hang on. I'm watching my neighbor's dog and it won't be quiet. I'm going to go put it outside. I'll be back in like 10 seconds.
You're good. So we'll chat about ourselves. So Goose, what's up with you? We got to entertain the listeners while they're in the absence.
It's Friday, so I'm happy. What about you?
That's Ryan? True. That's true. I've been doing a lot of coding with Claude 4, and it's been pretty good. Chat, what do you guys think of Claude 4? Let's get some answers. Oh, he's already back. I was prepared to monologue for longer, but there we go.
No, you're good.
Still put that in chat, guys. What do you think of Claude 4?
Yeah,
I haven't tried it.
But I hear you haven't tried it yet?
Really?
Wow. Missing out.
I'm busy.
Right.
He's employed, guys.
I'm busy. I know. I would love to. I will. Like it's on my not important and not urgent quadrant right now. Oh my God.
Anthropic, you hear that? You hear that, Anthropic? Not important and not entertaining enough.
All right. Be honest. Can you hear the dog barking?
I can, but it's not annoying.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
Chat, is it annoying?
Oh my
I mean,
all right. I'll stay muted unless I'm talking.
Okay, that's not a problem at all, and we can edit it out later in the video. Once this is
Chat,
really
you got to
posted.
live with it.
Yeah, you gotta live with it. Anyway, this is quite a pivot, going from music video production to programming. I mean, that's quite a journey. Do you feel like you are missing uh, the roots where you started?
No, I mean, I still really love music, you know, and I still play occasionally. I mean, I was pretty deep into music. I played everything that I could. So I've got, I mean, all on my walls in front of me, I've got, you know, guitars and bass guitars, and like I've got bongo drums and a drum set in my attic, and like all these amplifiers scattered around the house that I don't know, like I do miss it. I wish I had more time for it. But if I'm being honest, like I feel just as gratified or even more so doing what I'm doing right now, because I just like sharing, you know, feeling I'm a part of something. So if I wasn't doing open source, if I wasn't doing like programming and doing stuff like that, I'd just be like way overdriven to like make music and spread it out there as far as I can get it, you know. And it's like, well, people can't take my music and use it to build something else. It's that's pretty
This might
cool.
be a new frontier, like an open source music type
Yeah.
thing, where all like the what is it called? I'm not music savvy enough. Like what's the originals called? I feel like there's a specific name for them.
Stems and seeds type thing.
Yeah, like those, like within the original like mixer track or the original file, like making
Yeah.
all those Logic Pro files open source.
I miss it. I open it up every now and then. But it's more of a nostalgic thing, you know. I'm so dang rusty at it now that it's like a forgotten language for me. Like if I were to open up Logic today, I'd be like, wow, this all looks really familiar. How do I use this stuff again? You know?
Right.
So it's more fun just to go back, and at least I have lots of like recordings and music and things that I produced when I was like 10 years ago that I can just go back and listen to and be like, that was fun. And then I get back to coding. So
makes sense. So speaking of coding, and I mean, we might as well jump onto the TANs, the TAN stacks. So TAN stack originally started, if I understand correctly, with React table, right? What started you to essentially create this project? What led you to begin on this journey?
So the table, well, I was building just tons of dashboard stuff, data viz at Nozzle. I was the only front end guy at Nozzle for like 10 years, other than like one of the years. So I was co-founder, but also the only front end dude.
Right.
And it came with everything. Like I had to do all the data viz. It was the first library that I built. Now, the first library that I got really involved with was actually Chart.js. And I was one of two people who we rewrote Chart.js into 2.0, which is the one that made it really take off.
Right.
So I was like really deep into data viz, and I got done with Chart.js. And I was like, okay, this is cool. But we moved from Angular to React. I can't remember when everybody else was doing it. And
right.
When I moved from Angular to React, I was using this library called ng-grid. And when we moved to React, there was no ng-grid. There was ag-grid, but they were really, really young and fresh. And they had a React adapter, but it was like, at that time, it was like a shallow render template things into React. Like it was really weird. So it wasn't native. And I tried it out and I didn't like it. And I was like, well, what if there was like a native React table component? So I started building it internally at Nozzle first, just to like a way to take the pain away from building tables and grids. So I built it as a component inside of Nozzle, and I kind of built it isolated, knowing that I was going to open source it, because by that time I was like, you know, I'm going to be the only guy here for a while. It's a startup. It's scrappy. If I could like open source this package, I can kind of get a bunch of people to help me work on it and make Nozzle better. Because table is like a big deal at like a data viz. product. So that's where that started. I built React Table. I open sourced it. I didn't even really have to do that much marketing. It was just like,
it just kind of took off. Yeah,
it was there. And at the time, like, React Table, people were just Googling React Table. Like, it works.
That's amazing SEO. All you have to do is
SEO
just
is
name your
great.
thing properly. Yeah.
Yeah. In my opinion, it's like you either got to go one way or the other. You just got to name it exactly what it is and bank on, just really good organic. This is what it is, and this is what people are going to search for. Or you just make some weird name that there's zero competition for, like TanStack. So
that's right.
Yeah. So it didn't become TanStack Table until many years later. This was even after React Query and React Virtual and a couple of others. So yeah, but that was kind of where it started.
I see. So fast forward to where we are today. You went from React Table to React Query. Now we have TanStack everything. You have TanStack Router, TanStack Form, TanStack Pacer, DB, Ranger, TanStack Start.
Soon enough, we're going to have TanStack React.
Yeah. So what is your final goal with all these projects? When are you going to say, I built everything? Is that common? Is that your goal, or are you just continuously improving the ecosystem?
No, the way I see it is like, I don't know. I think that some of these libraries, some of them may not be around forever. Hopefully, because over time they just become less necessary, right? So the idea is there's always going to be something, think about it in terms of like a decade or a rolling 10 years.
Right.
There's always going to be tools that developers are going to need to like build pragmatically, in my opinion, because there's the future that's really, really bleeding edge and really exciting, but really difficult to keep up with, especially if you're being pragmatic. If you're trying to be like, well, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're like an enterprise company, you're lagging. You're on the other side of the spectrum. You're lagging really far behind, where it's like, oh yeah, we were just, given permission to use Tailwind or whatever, So there's this huge spectrum of like, well, how bleeding edge and how legacy are you? But in between that spectrum is just this sweet spot of like pragmatism. And I like to look at software through the lens of, I want to use tools that can live at any spot on that spectrum. So obviously I'm not developing things for jQuery, right? But React is a pretty well established platform right now. And other frameworks are tool, or just the concept of components, and the modern way that we're building applications. And I like the idea that you can take something like Query, like TanStack Query, and you could drop it into something completely new, very modern, very bleeding edge, and it's still going to be very useful. Or you can go back to a React application that's many, many years old, and without refactoring everything, just drop in a single use query, and all of a sudden things are just much better, So software, like tools like that, I think are really valuable. And that's kind of where I've tried to steer TanStack, is like these tools that will not only stand the test of time, but just always be useful wherever you take them.
Right.
That's
so you're
harder to
planning just
do.
for like the longevity of it.
Yeah. And so there's tactics to that too, where in the beginning, React Table was a component and it had its own markup and styles. And I gave a talk a couple of years ago at React Summit where, going through the pains of growing that, and to say, well, yeah, first we became headless so that we could survive the yearly wake of component libraries being reborn. And is it styled components or stylus or Tailwind or CSS modules? What is it? It doesn't matter anymore, right? So there's growing pains of like, how do we how do we make this usable everywhere we go? And then there was this growing pains of like the agnostic parts of it, where it's like, well, we're React only. Like we want to share this with everybody, you know? So going framework agnostic is a really difficult part of that. And then TypeScript was kind of the other really big thing that was like, okay, we need to rewrite everything we're doing to be type safe first, headless, framework agnostic. Like, I don't know how much more open we can get, you know, but the entire goal since I started everything under the umbrella of TanStack was that it was we were going to adopt these principles everywhere that we could. So I think those are the guiding principles. And if you look at it through that lens, I don't think there's not an end to what we'll probably keep building over the years, right?
Right.
The hope is that the concept and the difficult parts of building a data grid, they're probably going to live on forever. The way that we do that, the way that we style those tables, or, you know, the UI library that we use, or the reactivity paradigm, all that might change, but those challenges of managing table state and all that stuff, they're probably going to stick around. So, yeah, I mean, I don't foresee a lot of these problems going away anytime soon, especially because, you know, people are still moving from jQuery to React today.
Right.
So it's like, well, you know, there's always.
So I'm interested. Yeah. So I'm interested. How do you design like an API that is this like future proof to go through like major frameworks, like 5 frameworks, major paradigm shifts, and all these different things? How do you design like an application that does that? Or did you not? And you just kind of updated it every time?
A lot of it was trial and error, but I mean, where we are today might look simple, like, oh yeah, of course you would do that. But it's difficult because even when you're building a library, you've got to balance, you know, okay, it could take us 3 years to build this library, completely agnostic, totally type safe, you know, works everywhere, headless.
Right.
Or we could just build it for one framework, build it without super crazy type safety, but just good enough. And we'll ship our own styles and whatever, and you can get it done in a month, you know? So I think it just depends where you are. Like, I never would have set off on the journey to build things how they are today from day one. You just kind of build the skateboard, and then you build the go-kart, you know, and then you keep going. And yeah, today, now we have this infrastructure where if we want to start a new library, like we have an actual good use case and we want to build a new library, it's more clear now, where it's like, okay, well, we have all the tools that we're using in these other libraries that we can just kind of copy and paste over. We know the patterns that we're going to see. We're going to need state management. We're going to need a build system. And we just kind of have all of that in place now. So why not just copy it over? Yeah.
Yeah. It seems to me like quite a tar-pit sort of problem to work with, right? Because talking of major paradigm shifts in the JavaScript ecosystem, we've seen so many with React alone, right? Classes, functional components, hooks, server components now. And I understand server components in particular, like, were painful for you to work through, if I'm not mistaken.
Still are. I haven't worked through them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked through some of it, you know, but I mean, they're not shipped yet.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody other than Next has actually shipped them yet. I think but yeah, these paradigm shifts, some are easier than others. Like when React hooks were announced and came out, I was in the middle of building, the next version of React table to something else. And hooks came out like that week. And I was like, oh, I got to go refactor. And it only took like a couple of hours to change everything from components over to hooks and get some better code reuse. It was really exciting. But things like concurrent rendering have been more of like a bigger paradigm shift, something that holistically changes the way you think about it. And server components as well are very holistically different but they go further than just library code. They go all the way up to bundlers, bundler integration, which is one of the biggest reasons that you haven't seen React Server Components ship yet, is that they really are a bundler feature. And Next uses TurboPack, and of course they built it into TurboPack, but Vite itself just, there's lots of work being done there, especially by the guys on the React router team. Jacob Ebby, I think, is like probably the MVP of working on like the Vite RSC stuff. So there's still a lot of work to be done there, but like the patterns around React Server Components, I've gone through those, and I have built my own, versions of server components internally so that I can test on things like 10-stack router and 10-stack start. So we are prepared for the day when Vite can do React Server Component stuff. We're kind of just waiting and
anticipating it eagerly.
That sounds lazy, and it kind of is. Like I would rather, like, I have a whole framework to build, a whole full stack layer to build, and I'm like, I could just sit here and twiddle my thumbs, or I could even try and dive in on the React Server Component stuff. I'm not sure that I would even help or get Jacob any further than he already is or would have been. So I figured it was just better time investment to just double down and focus on shipping a non-React Server Component enabled framework first, and make sure that when that day comes, we can use it.
Right.
And in that process, I've gained some context around like how do I look at server component technology and pre-rendering and streaming and all this other fun stuff.
Especially with all the LLM stuff. The last two have definitely been more relevant, especially on streaming.
Yeah. And the whole time I'm looking at all of this, and I get excited about the new stuff too. Like I'm over the moon about server components because I've got a website that's mostly static documentation. I would love to use server components to cut down on like bundle and cut down on, all the code that I have to ship to the browser or to the client to rehydrate the app. But at the same time, I'm looking through the lens of pragmatism, saying, okay, React Server Components are really neat, but how does that help this guy who is stuck at his company that he's been with for 5 years? He's not allowed to run Node.js on the server. He's not even doing SSR. He's just building an application. He's stoked about the idea that he just got to use React Query or something like that. Like,
right.
How can I take something like React Server Components and actually make it useful for somebody in his position? And I think that's really challenging to say how far back can we take this bleeding edge stuff and actually make it pragmatic for people who are working with technology that's older. Does it involve just, hey, guess what? You've got to change your bundler. You've got to change your framework, your router. You've got to change the way that you write all of your React components. They're not going to go for that.
Yeah.
And neither is their company, especially if they're working at a company where it's like, hey, this crappy old legacy code is actually the code that's making us money. So why would we change that?
Right.
Yeah. It's all about balance.
That's right. When going back to React Query, you mentioned that it was very clear that it was taking off. You just created the library and you got traction on it. But when did you exactly know that you hit what in business people would call product market fit? Right? When did you know that you got something that people really wanted? Was it downloads, stars, or what was it?
Well, it was kind of in the middle of. It was kind of like right when COVID was starting, like end of 2019. In 2019, I started giving some talks about it. And then I gave a talk at, JSConf Hawaii, right when COVID was starting, like February 2020 is my birthday. And then everything kind of shut down. But even though everything shut down, I started getting invites to come and speak at conferences about React Query. And then I started getting people who were like, hey, come on my podcast and talk about React Query. And I think it's when like the marketing kind of turned on me, where before then I was like, oh yeah, I'm trying to get people to use this library because I think it's really useful and I think it makes your life a lot easier. And I was writing my own marketing content and pushing it myself. And I think when all that turned back on me, where it's like, okay, now people are asking me for more than I was giving, that's when I was like, whoa, okay, the demand now is there. Like I've sold it and people get it and they started understanding it. And all of a sudden we're like, people are like, hey, we want to make a course about this. We want you to come and speak about it. And it's like the flow of effort changed from other people pulling it from me instead of me pushing it out. And I think that's when I knew that, at least for React Query, that I was like, oh, this is going to be a successful library.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when that kind of envision happened in your mind, you were probably getting a ton of like downloads on like NPM and all the other stuff, because you've got over 1 billion downloads right now, right? I think on your combined, which is frankly incredible. But
yeah, it's pretty crazy. Actually, right now, if you take all the TanStack libraries and combine them, it's 2.3 billion, which is pretty
holy
nuts.
cow. Yeah, that's incredible. But unfortunately, NPM doesn't pay commission off of every download. So what revenue paths have like kind of panned out best for you, so that way you can kind of like focus on like the open source work, but then also be profitable?
Well, from early on, like I was able to work on a lot of this stuff because I had a full-time gig. Like we were building a company. We had to be scrappy. I really didn't build, I mean, other than React Static, which kind of goes unmentioned mostly, and that's fine. React Static was the only tool that I built that we didn't actually need at Nozzle. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of React Static or remembers it, but it was, so before front end frameworks were really taken off for React, there were, let's see, at the time it was Next.js and Gatsby. And those were kind of the big players. And or like Eleventy, like other static site generators, because
Right.
Lambda and serverless hadn't taken off yet. It was very new. And so the best way at that point to kind of have a full stack experience was with static site generation, where you're doing everything you can statically in CI and then just still shipping static assets. I loved that. And that was like where, hey, you can like hydrate these pages and turn, pre-rendered HTML into an SPA, and then it's all just SPA from there on out. I gave a talk about this at Jamstack Conf in New York, like many years ago. And I demoed a library I built called React Static. And I got really into React Static. And that was actually my first framework, like meta framework, that I'd never kept doing. But for a while, like this was back when I had figured out parallel static builds, and I was doing a ton of parallelization work across cores. For a brief moment, I had better build times and build speeds than either Gatsby or Next on static output. But then, like I said, Nozzle doesn't need that. We didn't need that. I just kind of built it for fun. I decided to move on. I gave it to some people who, kept doing maintenance updates on it and whatnot. But that was my first glimpse into like, oh, wow, like frameworks are really, really hard to do. Routing, everything. So after that, I was like, I would either need to like raise money to do that full time, or I'll just go back to doing my startup. And so I just focused back on Nozzle, and that's when I built React Query and built all these other awesome tools that we needed to get the job done. But from that point forward, most of it started coming in as GitHub sponsorships. So I can still remember the day that I got my first GitHub sponsorship for $5 a month. And I turned to my wife and I was like, babe, $5 foot long. and she's like,
What's that? $5 for 1 foot long? I don't know
I
what that
know,
is.
right? That's when it
You-
was. When
You mean
Subway was doing
$6 for 6-inch, right?
when Subway was doing the $5 foot long, that's when it was. And I remember turning to her and I was like, I just got a $5 month sponsor. We're like, whoa, somebody's paying me for open source. That's crazy.
That's awesome.
And from there, it just started to grow. And it was never enough to like become a full-time gig for a long time. I mean, it was just like getting a little bonus, here and there, a couple $100 a month, something like that. But it was around, let's see, it was probably around 2023 when things really started to get crazy. Because I built in these GitHub tiers that were just insanely high just for fun, just to see if anybody would click on them. And all of a sudden people started sponsoring me on GitHub for like $500 a month and, $300 a month. And so, and all of a sudden I got enough of those where I was like, holy cow, like I'm making more money doing this now than I'm paying myself from my startup. And that was really fun, but created some like turmoil inside my heart, and this was relatively recently that I was like, well, we still need a lot of stuff for Nozzle. I need to build more things that we need there. Router was kind of the last thing that I built at Nozzle that was like, we really, really needed it. We were bumping up against the ceiling of what React Router was just capable of doing with its APIs and around type safety and search parameter and state management and all this stuff. And eventually I was like, I'm going to try my hand at building a router. So I built it React only first. It's called React Location. It was like my toy router. This was before Remix was even public. And I was a beta user of Remix, like a paid user. And I loved the loaders and I love all the things that Remix had. And I was like, I'm going to bring that to my router. And I did that. And then I was like, man, I really wish I had figured out type safety first because this router still kind of sucks in terms of type safety. And that set off a really long stint of R&D, like probably about 2 years of just trying to figure out the best way to do type safety for routing. And it was really hard, like trying to invest that much time into a problem that I really hadn't seen anybody else solve that well. But we finally figured it out, and I had to learn TypeScript from the backwards. So I had to learn it like building libraries and generics and stuff first before I even implemented it in my code at Nozzle. This is really weird. So I learned all the really hard stuff first and then learned how to use TypeScript like a user after. But when I created Router, I think it did really well, like marketing wise. It's not crazy for downloads. If you go look at it right now, even today, it doesn't have a ton of downloads. But I did notice that for the people who are building really, really complex client-side stuff, they just loved it. So I saw that I had a lot of companies, big, like really big Fortune 500 companies and sophisticated application developers who were building like client-side apps. They were coming to me and being like, we just switched over. We love it. It's amazing. Yeah, most people don't even need it at this point because it was very focused on just SPA stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was fine with that because that's what I was building. I was building really complex client-side stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, you're doing a website, like go use Next. Go have fun.
Right.
I even built tanstack.com in Remix because I was like, I don't need all this crazy, Tanstack router goodness that I had built for Nozzle. So I had built it in Remix. Things took a turn when like a handful of people started using the router, and they're like, hey, we need to go build our marketing site now, and we don't want to use Next. And I was like, okay, go use Remix. And they go use Remix, and they're like, it's great, it's good, but we really wish we could have used router to do it and have it all be unified. And I was like, okay. Well, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing SSR. And they're like, oh, darn. Well, if you ever do, we would love to be involved. Right. And it just kind of started snowballing from there, more and more of that, until it got to the point where there were enough people who were interested in what I was doing with TanStack Router that there were a handful of companies that came to me and said, if you were to consider going full-time, we would support you. We would make this possible.
Interesting.
And one of those, the first one was AG Grid. They've always been an amazing supporter. Like, they believed in me way before anybody else, which is crazy because they're kind of even a competitor. But me and Niall, we went way back, and he was always just wanted to see what I would do. So he's like, yeah, I'll support you. I'll keep supporting you, basically. Convex was really interested. They were one of the first ones as well. And Vercel. I think Vercel, they were just interested to see what I'd be able to build full stack wise as well. So those three were kind of my first initial big sponsors. I'd call them partners for the deal. And when that happened, I pulled the trigger on going full time on TanStack. So I found some help to kind of cover my maintenance shifts at my startup, and said, hey, I'm going to go give this TanStack thing a go, see what happens. And so far, really good.
Yeah, this is incredible. This naturally flows into the question that I was really curious to hear an answer for. You turned this open source success into a business, and I'm curious if you learned any hard-earned lessons along the way. I remember, for example, there was I think it was a thread on Reddit. Somebody is like questioning your decision to take TanStack serious, and saying that it would turn into Netlify or whatever. Yeah, what are some lessons you learned?
I've had the idea to go full time on TanStack for the last decade. I mean, since I started doing open source, I was like, I would love to be a full time open source person, but I never did it because I knew that it needed to be sustainable. And I think over the years, it was very tempting. A couple of times, I had some VCs approach me and say, we would give you like a couple $1 million right now if you would commit to building the next thing, the next paid thing. And I was like, wow, that would be amazing, because I'd be able to do it I'd be able to do it full time. But what would I be doing full time? Well, I wouldn't be doing open source. I'd be building this new paid product. And it just felt like it would be distracting me from what I really wanted to do. So it pained me, but I had to say no. And it ended up like just a lot of people wanting to capitalize on the audience that TanStack was building. And there was even the temptation to say, well, we could build paid versions or paid products on top of TanStack stuff. And I'm like, that just kind of creates this weird tug of war between your incentives. And I just knew what my users would think when they're like, oh, you're creating a paid version of whatever. Like, come on, man. Like that, he just wants to exploit me for money now. He pulled me in with this tool. Like, they forget how great the free tools are that you've built for them. That he pulled me in with this tool, and now he just wants to exploit me for money. It's like, I never even wanted to get into that situation. And so I had lots of opportunities to do that, and I never did. But anytime that I saw an opportunity to make some money and collaborate with somebody, but still retain full control, I just incrementally took that. So whether that was GitHub sponsors, or saying, hey, you know what, good friends with my friend Tyler over at UI.dev. And he's like, hey, let's do a course together. And I'm like, cool, let's do a course, and I'll do lead gen for you, and it'll be the course. And it's amazing, And then now we're starting to get into like, well, how can we help with integrations with other companies? So it's just taking these little steps that retain control. And as long as you're not in dire straits and if you need money today, if you're going to go, if you're going to lose your apartment or lose your house and you got to put food on the table, like you've got to make decisions, that maybe aren't that, you're like,
Right.
yeah, I'll take that money. I'll build that product. But I always tried to stay in a position of like safety net and fallback security to say, I'm going to take risks so that I know that if that risk doesn't work out, I can always fall back. And I think that allowed me to look at things really long term. And I think that's the difference is if you know that you have time. This is one of the things we learned at Nozzle too, is we raised some money, not a lot. We took on some debt. And the one thing that we always wish we had more of was time, just time to think and time to get it right. And I started to guard my time really closely because of our experiences at Nozzle. And that's where I was like, I'm just going to guard my time to iterate on TanStack really closely. Yeah. And then eventually, it's nothing huge today by any means. Like I make enough money to support me and my family and to take most of my GitHub contributions, like my GitHub sponsorships now, and forward them to my maintainers and core maintainers. And the hope is that, someday soon I'll be able to hire some of my core maintainers full time as well. I'm not looking to be some unicorn thing or get acquired by some company or raise a bunch of money.
Universe.
Yeah, just go crazy and hire a bunch of people and build something crazy. No, I just want, like, for better or worse, TanStack's very much like a lifestyle business for me. I don't agree with everything. I don't agree with a lot of what DHH does with Basecamp and all that, but that's essentially how he runs Basecamp. It's like this lifestyle thing. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to own the universe to, have freedom to create and have sustainability for yourself and a handful of other people,
Yeah. Speaking of sustainability, I'm really, really curious to hear how you actually managed to stay sane while building a ton of projects, staying active on social media, running a business, and traveling with the family, right? Like, there's so little time in life.
Yeah.
And how do you manage to balance all of that?
One thing is I try and never get myself into situations where if I'm not there, things will burn to the ground. So the biggest part of that, the number one contributor to that is, there's two. So my family, where they let me step away to take care of things if I need to. But in exchange, I spend a ton of time with my family. I've seen my kids every day, all day for since COVID started, which is amazing. Wouldn't have it any other way. And the other part is my core maintainers. So TanStack has a lot of contributors, but there is this tight knit group of core maintainers that I would trust with. I do trust with a lot of stuff because this is an amazing group of people. A lot of these people have right permissions, and I mean, they're as much, in control of TanStack as I am. TK Dodo, he is React Query, and he has been for many years now. So it's because of these people that I think I'm able to focus on just one thing, because I do not do well with multitasking. I like to dig in on one thing and just get obsessed over that one thing for long periods of time. And so it's been really nice to have these people like Dominic and Kevin and Corbin and Manuel and Sean and Chris, and just like there's so many of them. They come into the community, they come into the Discord and the GitHub chats, and they just surface themselves to the top as these people who are just extremely capable and intelligent, and in many ways they're just better at doing all of this than I am. They're better at testing, they are better at maintaining, they're better at handling things with people on, like they're just better at so many things than I am, and I can just trust them to take a piece of TanStack and just run with it. And that they're the biggest reason that that's possible. So it's actually been top of mind for me lately. Like as the TanStack brand is growing, it's becoming more important and top of mind for me to make sure that just because it's named TanStack, it's not like the illusion isn't there that it's just me. And I have some ideas around that. We're going to start with the website and lots of other things, but I take that very seriously. These are people who honestly deserve as much recognition or even more than I do a lot of the time. So
yeah, it's amazing how much greatness can come out of building a community online. It has been one of the best thing about like internet, right? Changing the world, and open source in particular. I actually met Corbin the other day at a Zod 4 lunch party, like 2 days ago. And we were talking extensively about TanStack and TanStack Form, the library that he's largely working on. Really, really incredible stuff. And I'm really curious, like, how do you recruit these people? Is it just people who like show up in the community, like, I like your project, I want to work on it? Or do you submit a bunch of PRs and contributions and you just offer them to like collab? What's the process?
Everyone's a little different. Actually, so Dominic, TK Dodo, he came into Discord and just started answering everybody's questions about React Query. And he was, and to the point where like, dude, I don't need to be in this channel anymore. TK's got it covered, And then pretty soon he's like fixing bugs. He's like, hey, Tanner, I put up a PR for this. What do you think? And I was like, that looks good. Go for it. He's like, hey, I added some tests. We weren't testing this, so I added some tests. It's like, yeah, excellent. And then eventually it gets to the point where I'm like, well, we need this new feature. And I'm like, Dominic, do you want to spearhead this feature? And he's like, oh yeah, I got this. Because he's familiar with the code base now. And we go through the feature and he ships it. And then pretty soon I'm not the one hearing feature requests anymore. He is, and it takes a while, but like, that's how it happened. And every time that I'm able to like pull away from something to have more time on something else, I'm like, I'm going to up this person's sponsorship. I got to make sure this person's happy. Like, and that's how it happened with Dominic and Kevin Van Cott. Same thing with Table. He came in and just started answering questions. Pretty soon he's building tools on top of TanStack Table. He understands it. He starts understanding it better than I do now. And it's just a slow process of people who are not only just willing to come in and be like a good friend and a good support, but like they take interest in the project at a core level that really no one else, like it's 1 in 100,000 people are like that. And yeah, that's how it is with everybody. Corbin was actually the funnest one. We were at a summit for open source maintainers and everybody's showing off what they're building. And I'm like, yeah, I'm building this form library again, because I've already built React Form once and then I killed it. And I was like, I'm building it again, but it's going to be fully type safe and it's going to be agnostic and it's going to be based on Zod and all this other stuff. And Corbin saw that and he was like, whoa, I kind of did the same thing with house form, but I don't have the type safety and I don't have the agnostic part of it. And I was like, well, let's lash them together. And he was like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you sound like you know way more about forms than I do. So I'll donate all of my agnostic stuff and I'll donate my type safe stuff and the rest of our team that can help with type safety. and then you can bring over all of your like way better validation logic and life cycles and stuff, and then we'll just work on the API together. And I think it didn't take long. I mean, we had really almost what you see today for TanStack form. And then that one was really quick, where I was just like, hey, do you want to run with this? Because I'm distracted over here with a router. And he was like, yeah, dude, I'll run with it. I got it. Let's go. GitHub permissions, Discord role, off to the races. So
that's awesome. That's really rare that you find a person that is that self-sufficient and can just, you like really trust them too. You're like, hey, yeah, just do everything. That's perfect. And they deliver.
We clicked our personality types and everything. We clicked really early on too. Like he's like, what if we do this? And I'm like, that's genius. Let's do it. And I'm like, hey, what if we do this? And he's like, I love it. Like we were just on the same page, mostly on everything. And anything that we weren't, he'd be like, well, let me convince you. And he'd convince me in 5 minutes. And like, yeah, there's just, you find people that you just really work well with. And he's done a lot of open source too before this. So we both know how to work as a team, give and like push and pull, give and go. So it wasn't very difficult for him. And I think that's honestly a pretty big indicator of somebody who's ready to step into that role. Is it's like, how well can they handle communication with other people, and how good of a team player are they, and just how thorough are they,
Right. Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, that's cool, man. That it's really interesting to see like the ebb and flow of like the entire cycle, where you got started by just doing this as a little side project, and now you have people coming to you saying like, hey, how can I help? How can I assist? And then they just go off, and it's like amazing. Well, it's really cool.
Even to take that to the next level, like we've been thinking about real time for a while now, sync, but we haven't gotten into it. React Query was kind of close enough, but we've all been thinking about it quite a bit. Kyle Matthews, who used to be more of a competitor, like when I was building this React static framework, he was doing Gatsby. We both moved on, and now he's at Electric SQL. And he actually came to me and he said, hey, we have got this, TanStack DB. He says, we have this idea for sync from Electric SQL, but we don't want to build the front end too. Query is really close, but it's not quite there. It's the sync thing, but everybody else is doing full stack sync, and we just want to be a part of it. This client side thing could be reusable. And I was like, this sounds amazing. Exactly what we want. And we had a couple calls. We went through some ideas, and Kyle was like, hey, I want to spearhead this, and I want to release it under TanStack with the TanStack team's supervision, basically. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, let's do it. And so it is very much like his baby, and we're all just kind of collaborating on it where appropriate. And it's cool because now he gets to be back in open source land, which is really fun place to be. He doesn't need to worry about distribution and adoption, because we can get that for him.
It's already established. Yeah.
Yeah. And with everybody who's involved now, especially, and Kyle himself, like we can ensure a very high level of quality as every single other package. Basically every single person in TanStack vetted this idea and was like, yes, let's do this. And yes, we trust Kyle to deliver on the TanStack promise. And that was it. So, and it's like, it felt so turnkey and natural that I don't think we're going to be like slinging libraries left and right anytime soon, because like I said, it takes a very special person combined with this very unique opportunity to innovate in a very specific space. But it probably won't be the last time that we have something like that happen.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys build with TanStack DB. I've heard of the library a few weeks ago before it was like announced, I think, publicly. And I immediately was like super impressed. Like, oh my God, this is what people are looking for right now.
I think people will be really, really excited when we when DB gets closer to like a stable release and we launch TanStack Start, hopefully in the next couple of months, when those two things come together, Start, DB, router, query, like, man, it's going to be just a really exciting time to be lashing libraries together to build cool stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and you guys are building a lot of cool stuff. That's like really is seems to be like a very fun job to have.
well, and we have more stuff we're building in the pipeline too, working on kind of behind the scenes that I definitely don't want to spoil, but we're not getting into the AI space, but we're definitely going to be collaborating alongside it very soon. And also, I'm just excited about what we are going to be doing with like all of our partners very soon. Like Convex, I think we have some fun things, lined up for Convex, and Neon Database is on now as a partner. So there's just a lot of these fun integrations and things that I think very soon people will be they'll be surprised at how really easy it is to just start building a TanStack app and have a great experience with very little effort.
Really exciting stuff. We're approaching end of the hour, so actually we're a little bit over. So I'm going to try to wrap things up here.
Sure.
The final question that we usually ask our guests, I don't know if you've heard of it, but here it is. Be prepared. Really big one. What would be one piece of advice you would give yourself, a version of yourself from 10 years ago?
There is a correct answer.
Yes.
There is a correct answer.
There is a correct answer. Let's see. Somebody got it last stream for the first time.
One piece of advice.
Yes.
That you could give yourself 10 years ago.
10 years ago? Buy some Bitcoin, baby.
Oh, you're so close. That's
close.
good. That's a good answer, though.
It
the
is.
correct answer is buy
I figured that would probably be a
stock.
good answer, but
right. Yeah, buy NVIDIA is the meme correct answer.
Right.
But Bitcoin is you know what? I'll accept that as another correct option.
Buy investments in very specific things.
Right.
Sure. Back to the Future plot right there.
That's right. Invest in Berkshire Hathaway the moment Warren Buffett took over.
What is the correct answer? Now I want to know.
Oh yeah,
buy NVIDIA.
Buy NVIDIA. Yeah.
But Bitcoin's right. Hold on, let me do a comparison. You can give your real answer while I give.
I would say you've got to buy it, but then you've got to sell it at just the right time.
Right.
I mean, yeah, you're right. You're right.
But
taking things a bit more seriously, what would have been your answer to this question?
I don't know. From 10 years ago, I would probably say, I don't know. That's hard. I don't know if there's any advice that I could give myself that would change anything, right? But I guess like it'd be the same advice that I kind of live by today. It's just like don't care too much about what other people think. And I think my number one advice always, even for other people and myself, is just always be kind, no matter what. Because
those are wise words.
Though that's the only thing that you have 100% control over all the time, that I believe manufactures and produces the most luck for the amount of effort that you put in. So it is stupid simple and easy to be kind everywhere you go and to every person that you interact with. And I think people have no idea how far that goes in relationship building and communication and opportunities and investments, and even around personal life, of the way, like the perspective that you have on your challenges and your life. If you're being kind, you're going to have a positive experience around your stumbling blocks in life. So like, you'll just be happier. and you'll manufacture a ton of luck, and you'll have more friends and more people to support you. So like that is the ultimate advice, I think, and it always has been.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Be kind.
There we go.
That's why anytime I see somebody not being kind, I'm like, what are you doing? You're like, you're being an idiot. You need a reality check here, because especially people who are intelligent, if you're really, really smart,
Yeah,
but you're a jerk, then you're just like wasting so much opportunity.
right. It is our moral obligation to be optimists.
Yeah.
So this is your 1 minute we like to do where you can plug your own stuff. So where can people find your work, follow you, and just help contribute to your projects?
I think I've already plugged a lot of it, but you can go to tanstack.com. I think that's obvious. If you're a company and you want to work on something together, then you can just DM me on Discord. If you use Tanstack and you know your company has an open source budget, then you should sponsor. You can sponsor me or any of my maintainers. Either way, it's going to make its way to them. And if you want to do really deep integration stuff, I am always entertaining partnership ideas for Tanstack. That's how I'm going to get to that next employee. So that would be my plug. Is it's like, if you have a product or you know of a company that's like, hey, you know what? If they worked together with Tanstack, they would be synergistic. Like, let's find that partnership so I can like hire some more people. That's my plug.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's truly been an honor, and I know we've had some great discussions. It's been super great. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Oh, try Tanstack Start. We're about to release hopefully the final big beta version before release.
Final.
Yeah.
We've been working very hard on the next beta version before we'll start considering a release candidate, and it's coming out. By the time people listen to this, maybe it'll be out. So yeah, that would be my last call. It's just
and if you're afraid of trying out Tanstack Start, if you can start using Tanstack Router and then transition from there. It should be relatively straightforward.
Yeah, honestly, if you're just building an SPA, you don't even need to use Start, but you should try it out anyway. So basically, it's like 90% router anyway. So
there we go. Look at that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for coming on.
Here.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you for listening. If you would like to support our channel, make sure to follow, like, and subscribe. All the things. And until next time, we will see you later.
Cheers.